Right. So it's good to be here. Just to give a bit of background, so I am a life sciences, mental health, higher education professional with over 30 years of experience working in industry and doing public speaking. And so I come to this topic to let you know that this is one of the most challenging but rewarding skills that you will develop in your entire life. I also want to encourage those of you who come to this and say, well, I'm an introvert. I don't like to talk. I tend to be quiet and this sort of thing. And I'm going to talk about this a bit more later, but understand that introverts actually make some of the most skilled public speakers. And we're going to talk a little bit later about that. The reason I know to bring that up front is because when I deliver these talks and I teach courses on this topic, that is one of the biggest objections that come up for people, is that I'm never going to be able to be a good public speaker because, I'm quiet and I'm nervous. Okay. All right. So let's dive into this. Now, let me see here. There are two things I want you to jot down for yourself right now. And this is about priming your brain. 1, on a scale of 1 to 5, where 5 is expert and 1 is, well, not expert, beginner, how do you feel about yourself as a public speaker? Okay, 1 to 5. All right, everyone got that jotted down? Okay, I'm going to ask you I'm going to ask you that question again at the end. And based on what we talk about today, I'm going to ask you how you might feel differently. Second, I want you to jot down, and I think you said it, Miguel, the most consequential public speaking that they have to do soon is to give a presentation at the end of this program, right? Okay, so given that that's the immediate context, I want you to be taking very specific notes on what you hear from this discussion today that you are going to immediately apply to the presentation that you have to make at the end of the program. The reason that I say it that way is because if you're looking for it, you're more likely to find it. But if you just listen to me talk today and you're passive about it, you're going to miss a lot. But if you're thinking all the time, wow, he said this, I could apply this, I could apply that, I see how that might work, then you're going to be more likely to get more out of this, okay? All righty. So now, other thing I want to say, please ask your questions. Ask them verbally or put them in chat. And for those of you who have a question you want to ask, but you're like, man, I don't want people to know that I asked that question, do private chat. I will not divulge your identity, but I will address your question. Okay. So now, okay, I'm trying to figure out how to, here we go. Okay, so now, I want you to give yourself a break from the start when it comes to public speaking, okay? Because it's important to understand that 2,000 years ago, when the Buddha made a list of the greatest fears related to human existence, and you've already read the list, right? Public speaking is right there. 2,000 years ago. How does public speaking end up on the list of the 5 greatest fears of human existence? Someone tell me. It's right there. Loss of life, death, loss of health, loss of my mind, dementia, loss of my ability to make a living, which means I'm going to starve. Public speaking, loss of credibility. Loss of credibility goes to the deepest other fear that we have as human beings, which is exile. Exile. That the tribe is going to be so unhappy with me that they're going to send me out to the desert, and there I will starve and die. It's very important to understand how deeply rooted, right, in the psyche and the soul of human beings, the fear of speaking in public is. Because, if I don't speak in public, nobody knows what I don't know, and I'm good. But when I've got to stand in front of other people and disclose or express about some idea, I am running the risk that people are going to see who I really am, and they might not like who I really am. And thus, I'm doomed. So it is for this reason that I want you to offer yourself compassion, okay? I want you to offer yourself patience, but then I also want you to be persistent in how you go about developing your public speaking skill and practice over the course of your life. I want you to know that, as I said earlier, as someone who has been getting paid to speak publicly for over 30 years now, still, when I wake up in the morning and look at my calendar and I see that I've got to do public speaking, I have a sense of dread. I get a knot in my stomach. I feel breathless. I have like a mini panic attack. And that's after 30 years. Okay? So I want you to know that never goes away. That sense of dread, and do I really have to do this? And what are people going to think about me? Never goes away. What it is that you grow around that. You become more skillful. You practice so that you develop confidence. You learn techniques that allow you to regain your center. And we're going to be talking about a number of those things today. All right? And then I want to reiterate, introverts make exceptional speakers. And the reason for that is because they work at it. So, people who are naturally good at public speaking, they're kind of like, oh, I'm good at this. I don't really need to work at it or practice it. I just kind of stand up and I speak. Those people get so good and then they hit a ceiling because they don't want to work at getting better and better. But the introvert has to pay more attention. The introvert has to exhibit more courage. The introvert has to really plan and orchestrate what they're going to do. And it is for that reason that you actually have more potential as a public leader than people who are naturally good at it. And again, I want to say that because I want you to be encouraged. I want you to know you have the potential to be even better than those that are naturally good at it. Now, let me pause for a moment. How does this land? How did this slide and what I've said here land on you? You agree with this or you disagree? Does this kind of call up your own personal experience? Let me hear if there are any comments or thoughts about this. And again, feel free to put it in the chat as much as to speak up.
I guess for like the first part where you were talking about like how what the Buddha was talking about, what with the fear of loss of credibility, that kind of really resonated with me because as much as we like to think that we don't care what other people think, at the end of the day, we live with people on this planet, so we kind of do care about other people's opinions. So that's deeply ingrained into us, and that's why it's a big reason why public speaking is a huge fear of a lot of people.
Absolutely. It is.
I definitely want to echo that since credibility is our persona, our character is what represents us in our community. So we care a lot about that, how we are seen by others. And the moment that, as you said, our ideas or the way on how we think about different, about our opinions are out there for everybody to criticize and to see, then definitely, there's that feeling of what's going to happen. Is my character, am I going to be seen differently or not? Is it going to be positive? Is it going to be negative?
That's right.
I totally resonate with that.
That's right. Remember, exile. Am I going to be exiled at the end of this? But then again, bring compassion, the ability to suffer with, and patience, the understanding that if I stay with it, I can get better, a growth mindset, and persistence. Bring that to bear, okay? All righty. Thank you guys for those 2 comments. Now, appreciate that in public speaking, in any kind of speaking, really, change is the goal. Change is the goal. When you speak to someone, you are trying to evoke change. What are you trying to change? You're trying to change what people think by offering facts and logic. You're trying to change how people feel by offering stories and visual images. Because the visual center of the brain processes information exponentially faster than the verbal, and the visual cortex is more deeply tied to emotion. It is no mistake that we are more influenced by video and pictures much more than we are influenced by words on a page or someone saying something to us. It's embedded in our neurology, right? So whenever you want to change how people feel about something, leverage stories and images. And we're going to talk more about stories later. And then you want to change how people behave. And we change how people behave through modeling. So we tell stories about how different behaviors get better results, and through calls to action, which is why you never walk away from a public presentation without asking the audience to do something for you. You want to always have a call to action. Now, here's a question. Do you know what your change objectives are for the presentation that you're working on right now? Have you thought about that? Here in a few weeks, you're going to be going in and making a presentation to a group of people. Have you thought through, as I'm putting together this presentation, how do I want this audience to be thinking differently by the end of this presentation? How do I want them to feel differently? And what difference in behavior or change in behavior do I want them to be committed to exhibiting? Now, this thinking, feeling, behavior model is something that I learned when I worked in advertising. When you understand these change mechanisms, you will look at television and video, everything you see in the media, very differently. Because you'll understand every commercial you see, every newscast you watch, the people who planned it, they thought about this, right? Every word they use, every image they show you, every story they tell you, there's an objective behind it. Either positive or not so positive, as we know, right? And you want to get to the place where when you hear a message in the media, you're able to say, I see what they're trying to do. They're trying to get me to change this, that, and the other. Then you can say, I don't think I want to change in those ways. But if you're not understanding of this, you get shifted in a lot of different ways and you get controlled. So somebody tell me, what is a change objective that immediately occurs to you that you have for the MVP presentation that you're working on in any one of these 3 areas? A couple of people, tell us.
I actually have a question regarding that then, because
Sure.
I felt that the presentation was more of a informative presentation where we're
Yeah.
able to just share what we've done through the
Yeah.
program and what we've learned.
Yeah.
So in that regard, like, what is it? I can't think of anything that calls to action to my audience if I'm just sharing them from my stories, I guess.
Okay. So without knowing the details of your presentation, let me think of how to ask this. when you make your presentation, how do you want the world or the group to be different as a result of the stories that you're going to tell?
I hope that they will be more informed of the projects that I've worked on, like what they are and what I did, and to see how the project is going to be carried out once I leave.
Okay, tell me one thing that you hope will change in their thinking after they've been informed.
That change in their thinking.
Yep.
What would be some examples? So
Okay.
like, yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you one. And feel free to adopt this after I tell you. I want them to know that Nick Yee is a competent project manager. That's a change in thinking. When you came in the room, I didn't know that about you, right? And then you stood up and gave me a bunch of facts about how you got an idea, you converted it into a plan, you executed it, and here is an outcome. When you leave the room, I should be going, wow, that Nick, man, he's somebody that we need to keep in mind when we need a project manager. Right?
Yeah.
Okay,
That'd be nice.
Okay, right, exactly, right?
Yeah.
When it comes to feeling, I want to have heard some stories and seen some images that perhaps I come into that meeting and I'm thinking, these kids at MVP, are they really as competent and worthy of investment and attention? I hear so many bad things about the kids that come from where I think they're from, right? Well, by the end of the presentation, I should be doubting how I felt at the beginning. Even if I didn't change, I should be going, wow, this is like new evidence that I'm not as sure of what I felt when I first came into this presentation. I'm feeling a little bit different now, right? And then when we think about behavior, well, maybe I'm going to be thinking about making a contribution to MVP as a donor. Maybe I am the owner of a business or a corporation, and we have an internship program. And the different behavior is going to be next year, we're going to make sure that 10% of our interns are sourced from MVP. But understand that before I see your presentation, Nick, I don't have a basis for changing in any of those ways. But after I see your presentation, see, this is the power of public speaking. You can change people and you can change the world. But if you don't know going in what you're trying to change, then how much change do you think you're going to affect? Is that helpful?
Yeah, no, for sure. That's super helpful. I feel like it transforms, your objective, it solidifies them and gives you a direction to go rather than, I don't know,
That's
making
right.
it pointless. Yeah.
It also gives you a checklist. I'm going to get you, Miguel. I saw your hand. It also gives you a checklist that if you start with it at the beginning, when you're done preparing the presentation, you can actually sit and go through your presentation and go, did I in fact put the right facts in here? Did I put in the right stories and images? Did I really put in a call to action? And then you find, oh, I forgot to put that in. Now you go back and you can put it in. You can also share these objectives with other people and say, so like for instance, I'm you, Nick, and I put my presentation together, right? Well, when I send that presentation to Jia and I say, Jia, can you take a look at this presentation for me? But when you look at it, can you tell me if you think I achieved these 3 change objectives? Now, when Jia looks at your slides, she's not just looking at it without really knowing what she's looking at. She's looking at it with an anchor, and now she can give you better feedback as to whether you actually achieved your objective or not. Make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. Okay, Miguel.
Yeah, I just wanted to hop on that. What Craig is talking about is so important and so pivotal when it comes to public speaking. The way that I think about it is the so what factor. When you're
Yes.
thinking about your audience, everyone, just imagine everyone thinking, so what? As you're talking, the points that you're making, they're thinking, so what? Why do I have to listen? What is the point of this presentation? And if you share numbers, especially you in data science that are doing data science internships, if you just spew out all these numbers and data and project with no purpose, no higher scope, then you're going to lose some people, or you're not going to bring them along with you. So thinking, how can I create that change in someone's mind and have that from the beginning, middle, and end of your presentation? You can start thinking big picture. Why do we need this internship program? Why does it matter that you got this internship program and the things you've accomplished? The projects that you've accomplished, why do they matter in the larger frame of things when it comes to healthcare or tech? The contributions that you've made, why does that matter? So what, so what, so what? So thinking about that, thinking of the bigger picture will take a good presentation and really make it great.
Make it great, absolutely. But you'd be amazed the number of presentations that get done where people don't think about this and they lose a lot of opportunity. They lose a lot of opportunity, okay? All righty. So now let me keep moving here. So now, you must know your audience as much as you know yourself. And by the way, most of us don't even know ourselves when it comes to public speaking. So first you got to get to know yourself, then you got to get to know your audience. So what do you need to know about yourself? You need to know about your own style and image. Can you write down 3 things that would describe your strengths when it comes to how you speak? Volume, tone, language, metaphors and analogy, deep knowledge and understanding of a particular discipline or area of expertise or knowledge. Do you understand how you look good standing up in front of an audience? What are the kind of clothes that particularly make you look authoritative and confident? What kind of colors complement, right? These are things that you want to learn about yourself. Because when you make a presentation, people are not just buying the information, they're buying you. As a matter of fact, a good presentation can be damaged by someone who doesn't show up confident, professional, and prepared. Because people are looking to you more than they're looking to your information. And if you don't show up in a way that is confident, professional, and authoritative and influential, then they can't believe in the information you're delivering. Now, you might say, well, man, Craig, how do I get insight into that? Well, by asking. Really. Like you can ask a bunch of people actually throughout your life. I can tell you that when I did this exercise for myself, I went and asked like my parents and my grandparents and uncles and aunts. These are people who watched me my entire life. And you kind of ask a question like, when you've seen me communicate and I've been most effective, what was it about how I communicated or where I was or how I was dressed or the language that I use that you remember as being really effective? And then stop talking and just listen to what they have to say and keep really good notes and look for patterns. And don't say, "Aw, shucks, I wasn't really that good." No, say, "Thank you very much for that feedback," and keep it moving, okay? Your stories. Knowing your stories is important. Every one of us has a life, a history, and that history has many stories about how we've succeeded, how we've learned, how we've produced good outcomes, right? It's good to make a journal or a list of the key stories of your life, and particularly the ones that you tell well, because that's going to become a sort of a list of content that you will then integrate. I make all kinds of presentations, and there is a certain number of stories about my life that I tell very consistently throughout those presentations. And that's because I know my stories. And we're going to talk later about the power of stories and how they help you. Nervous tics. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? These are nervous tics, right? These are, like, for me, it's right. You hear me say right over and over again, right? Knowing your nervous tics, knowing where they work and where they don't is important. Knowing your nonverbals. What are my nonverbals? Facial expression, voice quality and intonation, bodily posture, fidgeting. Understand that more than 90% of communication is nonverbal. So you want to be familiar with your nonverbals when you get nervous. And a part of becoming a better and better public speaker is knowing when, you know, how to practice in a way that you bring those under control. Okay? Remembering to breathe. Breathing is one of the most important sub-skills of public speaking. For most of us, when we become nervous, we do one of two things. We either hyperventilate or we hold our breath. You must remember to breathe. You must learn and practice how to breathe to your belly. When we breathe into our chest, that sends a signal to the brain that it's time to panic. This is our autonomic nervous system, right? It happens beneath the level of our consciousness. When I breathe to my belly, that brings the nervous system more into a state of relaxation. I get more oxygen in my brain, which means I can think more clearly. I get more oxygen into my muscles, which means that I cannot be like this, which tells everybody in the audience that I'm not sure of myself, but I can, right? This is why practice, practice, practice. There is no substitute for practice. Now, how many of you ever heard of Toastmasters? Okay. I encourage all of you who want to get good at your public speaking to look up your local Toastmasters and think about joining, right? Toastmasters is an international organization that sets up local groups for people who, it runs the range from people who don't have confidence in their public speaking, so they're in a trustful, non-judgmental community where they can get better, but also people who speak for a living. They're experts at speaking, but they know they can still get better. I recommend it. The other thing, lots of people take drama and improv classes as a way of getting better at their public speaking. Why? Because public speaking in many ways is acting, right? It is the actor's craft. And so taking drama lessons can be quite good. And even more fun is taking improvisational, or stand-up comedy lessons, actually, okay? So knowing yourself is important. Now, Navrata, was that a hand up because you had a question? Okay, please.
No, sorry, I've been a part of Toastmasters before, so I just wanted to say that.
Tell us a bit about what your experience has been.
It was actually great. Like, I was a part of the kids group when I was younger, and then like sort of transitioned to the Toastmasters community, and I did it for over 5 years. So it was a great experience, and I feel like really helped me with public speaking for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're quite easy to find.
Yeah.
And again, everyone there, like, you don't have to worry about a lot of judgment because everyone there is trying to get better, right? It's not like a bunch of people who are like, I'm really good at this. Let's see how you can fail. It's more like we're all trying to get good at this. Come in, let's work together and be the tide that raises all of our ships when it comes to this. Yeah. Now, next, you got to know your audience. Okay? So you have to spend time with members of the audience that you're presenting to. You have to understand, what are their needs and agenda? Because the best way to get me to change, right, to change my thinking, feeling, and behavior is to give me something that I think is important, right? That's just human. If you don't know what's important to me, then you're not going to be able to present to me as well. What are my preferences and peeves? What do I like and what do I dislike? What are my stories, my analogies, my metaphors? When you make a presentation to me and you integrate my story, I identify with that, and now I'm more easily influenced. Language and jargon. That's how we know who the tribe members are and who's not. You want to make sure, particularly when you're presenting technical information, this is information that you know that the audience doesn't know, that you really work at simplifying jargon. Because any of us who are expert at anything, we've got a language that's related to that discipline, that when we use it, it tells everybody that I'm that person. But people who aren't in that tribe, they think you're just showing off. So you definitely want to know, one of the quickest ways to turn people off is to stand up and start spouting a lot of jargon, language that people don't understand, and you turn them off. This is one of the reasons why you always want to have a pre-presentation where you get to try your presentation out on a member of that audience before you get in front of the group. And then you ask questions like that. As you go through this presentation, can you tell me where I use language that you don't understand or that I need to simplify? Can you tell me where there's an opportunity for me to use a metaphor or an analogy that the audience will understand and that will resonate with them? Okay. You want to know about the history of the audience and what is their perception of you and the group that you represent. That's important because you'll get questions where people are expressing skepticism and you don't want to get caught off guard by that. If you're going to present to a group that lacks confidence in you, you want to know that. That will allow you to have a better prepared presentation. You want to tailor your speaking to what the audience needs to make a decision to change. Now, those of us who know a lot like to data dump, is what it's called. I know a lot, and because I'm nervous and I don't really know what your needs are, I'm just going to tell you everything. Not good. Not good at all. People don't want to know everything you know. People want to know what they need to know to make a decision to support or not support whatever it is you're presenting. So the more you know about your audience, the more you can tailor what it is you're going to say to what it is they need. Because remember, the presentation is about them, not about you. You don't need to make a public presentation for you because it's all in your head. Public presentations are about the audience, okay? Definitely try to meet members of the audience. And if you can't meet them, meet someone who knows them. If you can't meet in person, do a short video of you making the presentation and put that video with the slides and send it to a member of the audience with a list of questions and ask them to take a quick look and give you some feedback. See, we got technology these days, right? So there are ways of getting feedback from people using, video and email and this sort of thing that doesn't necessarily mean that I have to physically be in front of that person. So use the technology to your advantage. But try not ever to present to a group without getting some intelligence in advance. Now, you find that you have to present to a group and you weren't able to get a lot of knowledge in advance, then the first presentation is about getting information from them, not about you presenting to them. So you start the presentation with, I'd really like to take this first discussion to ask you some questions to get some insight into what your needs are. And then I'd like to then better use your time by using the information I collected to prepare something that's going to be meaningful to you. Don't be afraid to do that. It's better to do that than to waste people's time and then not get another opportunity. Let me pause here a moment. Questions, thoughts, comments about this?
I just want to say that I completely resonate with what you just said about knowing your audience.
Yeah.
I have attended, multiple conferences, scientific conferences where they just go. And as you said, they are very knowledgeable of the topic that they're talking about. And they just go about and, pouring all the knowledge that they have about a particular subject. But going back to Miguel's point, so what?
So
what's
what?
the point?
Exactly.
What's the point of all this data? What does this mean? Because, I trust you're incredibly smart, you know what you're doing, but what does this mean in the big schemes of things? So
Right.
I think that's something that, even personally, over the course of my career, in academia and all that,
Yeah.
it's always that is, keeping that in mind when you're
Right.
going to present new information. Is
Right.
the audience going to be able to relate? How is it going to relate? How are they going to understand it best?
That's right.
And, select exactly what is needed in order to
Right.
convey the point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So thank you for that affirmation, Juan. I really appreciate that. But that's one of the most common, but also most easily avoided mistakes that you see in presentations. It really is. And it's one of those things that's easy to see when someone else is doing it, but very difficult to see when you're doing it. It really is. Which is why that's the importance of having other people look at your presentation and give you feedback before you have to get up and present it to a group. Miguel, you look like you have a comment. No? You good? Okay. All righty. Okay. All right. So let's keep moving here. Now, you know yourself, you know your audience, but then you have to know your flow. All right. What is your flow, you think? What's your flow?
I guess flow would just mean how fast you go over topics. Like you don't want to just like go through them. Like which topics you're gonna spend the most time on, or you think that the audience might need more time understanding. So you just need to find the right flow.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And then get this, and then you got to gauge that flow based on the responsiveness of the audience. Right? So planning your flow is benefited from the insights you get from researching your audience, right? It's also benefited by knowing what your change objectives are. So you know how much fact versus image versus story versus model and call to action is going to be brought to bear to get the change you need. And flow is also going to be a function of your personal speaking style, where you want to cultivate your own personal speaking style. Like you can learn things about good speaking from other people, but the reason you practice is you're trying to develop your own effective speaking style that matches your personality and image, so that when you speak, people go, yeah, I'd love to see Namrata present. Her style of presentation is something that I just really enjoy. And that can be true of every one of us, right? Yeah. Like you notice, my speaking style, I'm kind of fast-paced and enthusiastic and kind of kinetic, right? But you shouldn't say, well, just because Craig presents that way, I better learn how to present that way. You should say, well, that's a style that Craig has developed over time, and clearly he does it because he gets good feedback. But that doesn't mean I need to present like Craig. That means I need to find a style that people respond to in similar fashion. Okay? All righty. And then remember, it's taken me more than 20 years to develop this style. So be patient, be persistent. Okay? All righty. Now, dance, don't run. Now, what do I mean by that? Running is a rush to the finish. Running is what I call a dump and duck out. It's what Juan talked about, right? I'm going to dump this information and I'm out of here. Because I'm nervous and I don't even know you people because I didn't do no research. That is the worst way to do a presentation, is to run. What you want to do is dance. Now, we all know the good feeling of dancing, right? What is a dance? A dance is a cyclical dialogue. It's two people in connection with one another, feeling one another out, back and forth, moving in time, right? So what is the nature of dancing versus running? I offer you some information and I pause. I'm sorry, Juan, go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was just gonna say that the difference would be connection. You know,
Yes.
you want to
yes.
connect with the audience.
Right.
With running, you're just doing it for yourself. Dancing, you have to connect with the audience.
There
And
you go. There you go. And as you know, at the end of a good dance, when there's been connection, the other person, they feel good. They feel they've been heard. They feel their needs have been met, right? They're now willing to say, you know, I'm going to change for you. I'm going to change how I think, how I feel, and tell me what you want me to do. And that's really what you want at the end of every presentation. So when we dance, I offer some information and I pause. I give you a chance to ask questions to clarify your understanding, and we pause. We then bring our two perspectives together to collaborate. Then we proceed to discuss or to understand what we can create together. And then we repeat. Now, does every presentation go so beautifully as a dance? No, it doesn't. But my point is, don't run. Even when the dance partner or the audience is acting like they don't want to dance, don't start running just because you get nervous. Stay open, receptive, and in a cyclical dialogue. Sometimes you have to accept that I can't get my entire objective achieved in one presentation. This presentation is a start, and I'm going to have to schedule time to do this again or to go talk with individuals. Because sometimes you'll leave a presentation and you'll realize that certain people in the group got it. There's some other people who didn't get it. I better go sit down with them individually in order to try to bring them around, okay? Now, you plan your flow, and then you have to protect your flow. Now, how do you protect your flow? Well, first thing, remember to breathe and pace yourself. And especially when you get nervous, right? That's how you protect your flow. You get nervous and get out of your flow, you're not protecting it. You lose the audience. Now you start running when you should have kept dancing. Develop a pre-presentation ritual for yourself. Stretching. So, you know, when I do presentations where I'm very nervous, I've got a whole set of yoga stretches that I do to get energy out of my muscles, because I collect tension in certain parts of my body that make me like this. It even changes my voice. And then I have to stretch, right? Get my body loose and open. And now I can present in a way that's going to be credible. Smiling is helpful. Smiling has an effect on the nervous system as well as on others. Greeting people. When I'm presenting, I make sure that as people, first, I always get there early, and I make sure that as people come in the room, I take the time to walk up to them. So if we were in the room together today, I would have been walked up. Juan, I'm Craig DeLarge. I'm going to be presenting today. It's good to see you. Jayi, I'm so glad you were able to make it for the presentation today. I hope you're going to enjoy what I present. Tafiq, I was talking to Miguel the other day about the fact that you were going to be here, and I hope that you really get a lot out of the presentation, right? That's warming people up. That's helping you to relax. That's creating some early connection, okay? And then don't be afraid to use 3x5 cards to help your memory if you need to, okay? In an audience, find or install friendly faces and ears. Now, what do I mean by friendly faces and ears? Friendly faces are people who are your ally. You know that if all the people in the room are frowning and looking like this, I don't really want to be here. There's at least one person who goes, you go, you're doing good, right? You're doing good. What are friendly ears? Friendly ears are the person who you ask to be in the presentation, to listen to how you're delivering, as well as watching the people who are receiving so that they can give you honest feedback after the fact. So if Juan is presenting and I'm the friendly face and ears, whenever Juan looks at me, I'm going to be like, keep it up, man. I know you're nervous, but keep it up. And then afterwards, I'm going to say, well, Juan, you did a good job in these ways, but I want to tell you that next time, I think if you did this, that, and the other, your delivery would be even better. Okay? Keep a notebook and a pen so that you can write down questions. Don't rely on your memory. Okay? And by the way, don't think that you got to know the answer to every question in the presentation. You never will. You just never will. That's why you need a notebook. It's okay not to have the answer, as long as you're willing to say, that's a good question. I'm going to write it down here in my notebook. I'm going to do some research, and I promise I'm going to come back to you and have a further discussion about this. I see too many people collapse because they think they need to be the know-it-all in a presentation. No, you don't have to be. Be sure to distribute eye contact. So as you're presenting, take seconds here and there to look at everybody or every section of the audience so people feel that you've connected with them with your eyes. Distribute physical position. Don't stand in one place. Make a few statements and take 2 steps this way. Make a few more statements and take 2 steps that way. All right? So that you don't look like a telephone pole. Also distribute nonverbal noticing. Don't get so deep in your presenting that you're not paying attention to the people, their facial expressions, their body posture. Do they look interested or not? Do they look confused or not? Does somebody have a question on their face and you know you need to slow down and open up the room for discussion? Did someone ask a question and you know there's another person in the room who knows more than you do? So then you say, Tawfiq, that was a good question, but I was talking to Nick just the other day and he's an expert on this. Nick, do you have a point of view about the question that Tawfiq asked? See, I don't have to know everything, right? I'm trying to facilitate a discussion of the group, not standing up and acting like, well, if I don't know, nobody knows. And of course, I should have let Nick know before the presentation that, Nick, because you're an expert, I'm probably going to call on you at some point during this presentation, so be ready, right? Okay, so that distribution is really important to protect your flow. Okay, now, things that can enhance your presentation. And Miguel, I'm looking at the time. It's getting away from me, but I'm going to speed it up. Okay. Humor is a powerful tool that works or it absolutely does not. When in doubt, do not use humor. You test your humor in your pre-presentation, and if people say that joke will not go over, that story will not work, believe them, because they know the audience better than you do. Only use humor about yourself and your group. Do not use humor about other people. It's too risky. And what you could gain is not worth what you will lose. But do understand that things that are delivered humorously are better remembered. But be careful. Be careful. Metaphor and analogy, which is using the familiar to introduce the unfamiliar. Metaphors and analogies are very powerful shortcuts to comprehension. which is why you want to ask the question when you're doing your audience research. What are the metaphors and analogies that are common to their tribe? Though you would never use the word tribe, you get what I mean. And then see how you can integrate those usefully into your presentation. Props. Props are three-dimensional items that can be used with the audience that give them an engagement of their tactile, something they can see, touch, feel. If you have such, it will increase memorability because more of the senses engaged with it and credibility. So when I used to work at J&J years ago, I worked on Mylanta. You know, that's the antacid you drink. A prop that I would often take to meetings were samples from the lab so that people could taste the latest formulation. Think about how three-dimensional tactile props can improve your delivery. Now, stories. Stories, and by the way, let me go here. Stories. Stories is the superpower of public speaking, okay? Stories are a technology as old as civilization, a method that we are neurologically hardwired to use to make sense of reality, a technique by which we sequence facts in a way that people understand the cause and effect relationship between the facts. If you don't embed narrative and stories into your presentation, people will make up a story, which is why you may as well make up the story rather than letting people make up the wrong story. Okay? Think about the story elements. And this goes now back to our literature classes we've taken in school. Setting is for context. Character is for empathy and self-identification. The journey helps me to anticipate. The obstacles give me dramatic tension. You know, at the end of every Netflix episode, the reason you want to watch the next episode is because how will the hero overcome the obstacle, right? Lessons learned are for growth. Connection is for relevance, is what Juan said earlier. Tell me what's in it for me. And call to action is for participation. When you're putting together your presentation, think about how well have I used these elements of a story in what I've put together. Okay. Some thoughts on public speaking for MVP.